design. You lack control or micromanage. You are working in isolation. Flavor 2 is called the happy overwhelm. This is where you just have too much of a good thing and too many cool things to do, and you mistakenly volunteer to do them all. Your job is challenging but fun, people you work with are great, and the projects you get offered are all high impact and worth doing. You are just doing too many of them. Both Hydra Overwhelm and Happy Overwhelm are pretty straightforward and in fact share the same solution, with slightly different implementations. You need to do less and get control of your time. This is where the old design adage less is more comes in handy. How you manage this, task reduction, depends on the Hydra or Happy Overwhelm you are experiencing. The nine-headed monster. In Hydra Overwhelm, you want to get rid of, or get permission to drop, the too many things in your plate. Start by looking over the list of possible Hydra sources listed above to get your juices flowing, then make your own list of all the tasks you are doing. Make it objective, but list everything. Then, and this can be hard, pick 1 or 2 items on the list you can modify, work around, or even skip completely. Remember to set the bar low method and pick simple changes that you can initiate yourself. Things like, if the root cause of the overwhelm is consolidating data from too many sources, ask accounting to give you 1 spreadsheet, not 6, consolidating the monthly budget numbers. Explain with empathy for accounting that this will lead to more accurate forecasts to everyone's advantage. If the root cause of the overwhelm is working in isolation, take the lead on organizing a Monday Munchies run, a snack run with your colleagues, and a Wednesday walkathon, and organize walk around the building for a midday stretch, and even a Friday freestyle, a lunch conversation with coworkers about news of the day, but no politics, office or otherwise. You'll probably surprise yourself once you start brainstorming ways to reduce your task list or connect more with your coworkers. You are more in charge of your Hydra than you think. However, unless you are your own boss, there are some solutions to Hydra Overwhelm that will likely need permission from the higher-ups to implement. The best way to get the solutions you need approved is to start with empathy for your boss's needs, and frame your requested change in those terms. Boss, you say, here's the situation. I'm getting swamped with stuff that really has nothing to do with what we're trying to get done around here, and it's reducing my productivity. This isn't good for me, the team, or you. I could be a lot more effective and get the stuff that you think is critical done faster, but I need your help. I need to come in later on Thursdays. Upgrade from the 1998 version to the 2015 version of your key software app. Change the weekly report to a monthly report. Split my internal clients into 2 groups, A's and B's. I've got a list for you right here so that I can guarantee 24-hour turnaround for the A's like always, but 96 hours for the B's. Or, you get the idea. The only way to change your Hydra Overwhelm situation is to change something. Figure out what small incremental move you could make, the one with the greatest impact and the most probable endorsement from your boss, and give it your best shot. You probably expect your boss to reject your idea, but you might be surprised. If you start with empathy for the boss's situation, you are much more likely to get approval, especially if you use a trial, an experiment, or a prototype to frame your request. Lots of our students, clients, and readers have made significant changes in their workload with this method. Myra, one of our workshop attendees, proposed prototyping a change, not doing the weekly asset reports for 1 week. The report was a pain in the neck to produce and she was pretty sure no one cared about it. She checked with her boss to see if it was okay, and he said she could try and prototype it for 1 month. After 1 week, there were no emails, no complaints, nothing, so she did it to the report the next week. After 4 weeks of no reports and no complaints, she went to her boss and said, Boss, I'd like to discuss the weekly asset report prototype you talked about. Boss, how did it go? Myra, the results are in. I haven't done those reports for 4 weeks in a row and no one has complained. Boss, I didn't even notice you stopped. Myra, yes, the prototype revealed that you never read that report and no one else does either. I'd like to stop doing it and spend the time on organizing our sales data better. You said that was your number 1 priority, getting better sales information out to the field. Boss, okay, but we've always done the asset report, maybe you could do them quarterly. If, after a year, no one comments on the quarterly reports, you can drop them entirely. That a deal? Myra, deal. Boss, great, now get the important sales data project going. What Myra's story teaches us is that things might be more negotiable than you think they are. And Myra played it smart. The key to negotiating out of Myra's busy work, the asset report that no one was reading, was understanding that there was more strategic work to be done, and suggesting a low-risk prototype to get data about a possible redesign of her tasks. Myra also moved from disengaged doing busy work reports that no one reads as a great way to create a really disengaged worker to feeling like her work was of strategic importance. A double win. So the path forward is, well, straightforward. We encourage you to start prototyping small changes to your task list. You will discover that you have more agency than you think, and whether you have to ask for permission to try something or not, you are the initiator. An initiation is one of the things you're keeping track of with your good work journal, right? So much happy. Happy Overwhelm is a little different. Since you chose all of the things that are overwhelming you, Happy Overwhelm often comes with more flexibility and a higher degree of electiveness to your options. The number 1 solution to Happy Overwhelm is delegation. Of course, you have to be willing to let go of 1 or more of the many cool, fun, impactful, amazing things you get to do every day. But you'll get to do some of those amazing things longer and avoid the potential for burnout if you learn to share the joy. Since the fun, challenging, interesting things that are overwhelming you are attractive, you can very likely give them to your colleagues easily. This is very unlike the Hydra Overwhelm problem, where the issue is getting rid of stuff that no one wants to do. If you really want to get a lot of time and energy back, you can give away your most prized and high visibility activities. Those are the easiest ones to find takers, and giving them away frees up a lot of time. For instance, Dave used to do all the section facilitator trainings for the Stanford Designing Your Life course. He'd done these dozens of times and had built a decent set of handouts for the training, and loved doing it, but he needed to let something go. He asked one of our Life Design Lab fellows who had seen if he would just once to lead the next session. He did great, to Dave's astonishment. Dave never did it again. A few quarters later, Dave sat in on the facilitator training being done by yet another staffer, and it was way better than it was when Dave did it. Dave's delegation worked, he got more time and the facilitation training got better. Of course, we are not just workers. Sometimes, when you have Happy Overwhelm, you need to delegate some stuff at home. When Bill worked at Apple and joined the brand new PowerBook group, they were putting the final touches on Apple's first laptop. Codenamed Tim, it was released as the PowerBook 170 and it took the industry by storm. Bill jumped in and, as the mechanical project lead, took on the next laptop project. Codenamed Suntory, it was being designed in a joint venture with Sony, and this meant dozens in a plane to Tokyo almost every month. And because the product line was so successful, new portable projects were popping up faster than Apple could hire. Bill took on another laptop project, codenamed Asahi, and another, codenamed Bonsai. Bill really liked Japanese code There was just one problem. They didn't have the money to delegate these tasks to someone else. So Bill went to his boss at Apple and told this story. Right now is a critical time for our group. We are riding a tiger in the fastest growing part of Apple's business, portable computers. We are setting the standard for the industry and, right now, we have more projects than people and we can't hire fast enough to keep up. I'm all in, 110%, and I recognize that this is a very special opportunity to be part of something amazing. That's why I volunteered to do 3 projects at once. At the same time, everyone else in my role is doing just 1 project. I figured out that to sustain this level of commitment and to make time for my family, I need to outsource a bunch of things in my life, and that's going to cost a lot of money. I need a raise. It was good storytelling. It was true, and he got the raise. Not right away. He needed to prove that he could take on the 3-project challenge and make it work. But he and his wife made it work by delegating out from under their happy overwhelm. Shout out to small business owners. Avoid the owner's trap. If you're a small business owner, you're at particular risk for overwhelm, especially hyper-overwhelm. Describe next. Many business owners feel trapped in a box that they think they can't get out of because, well, they made the box. If this is you and your business has you in overwhelm too much of the time, the only boss you can talk to is you. You own not only the company, but also the processes and procedures and roles and responsibilities. You own the how of the company as well as the what, and that sense of personal ownership and responsibility can keep you in a special brand of stuff. Everything in this book and in our first book applies to you. You can design your way out of being stuck and out of overwhelm the same way an employee or a consultant or a gig worker does. You can design your work life right where you are. The mindsets are the same, and you don't have to ask permission. But your particular brand of stuff, the one that has outsiders scratching their heads and wondering why, if it's your company and you're in charge, you don't just make the changes you want to make, is often harder to recognize. Those outsiders are right, but since they couldn't possibly understand your business or appreciate all you are doing, you just ignore them and work harder. The ironic thing about being a business owner is that most people who choose that path do so in order to chart their own course and work on their own terms. They want autonomy, so they strike out on their own. Then once the business gets going, they often feel less autonomy than many corporate employees do. So business owners have a high risk of getting stuck and overwhelmed, but there is a way out. Step 1. Remember you are still in charge. What subtly happens over time is the business gets in charge of you, not you in charge of the business. Sure, you've got tons of responsibilities and obligations and people and customers depending on you, but it is yours to run and manage as you see fit. You aren't any less powerful or any less in charge than when you started your business, you're just busier. Step 2. There's only one rule, obey it. In any business or institution, whether it's for profit or non-profit, there is only one inviolable rule, don't run out of money. As long as you are selling enough products or services, or garnering sufficient contributions from donors to cover your expenses, you get to stay in business. The ink at the bottom of your spreadsheets has to be black, not red. If it's stuck in red, you're in the process of going out of business, and if that's the issue, then you need different help that is probably in a different book. This rule is incredibly freeing. As an owner, you can literally do anything you want as long as you can afford to keep the doors open and pay your taxes, not break laws, etc. You can reduce or expand your offerings. You can sell off part of the business to make it simpler to run. You can apply pretty much all the ideas in this book to your situation. Even if you need to make dramatic changes to the business to get out of overwhelm, you can because you are in charge. That's it. Ellie, a former neighbor of Dave's, ran a successful local restaurant for years. It's a relentless business because people want to eat pretty much every day. She got tired of the relentlessness but couldn't figure out how to change her overwhelmed situation. Then she realized that it was up to her, it was her restaurant. She remembered why she opened it in the first place, to make great Mexican food that people enjoyed, and realized it had nothing to do with a big room full of tables. It's about the food. She ended up closing the restaurant and buying a food truck. She got rid of the rent. She cut her staff and her hours. She traded 10% of her money in order to lose 100% of her overwhelm. She redesigned her business to work for her. You can, too. Hyper-overwhelm, a special case. The last flavor of overwhelm is a special case, and you usually find it in new organizations or startups. We call it hyper-overwhelm. This is where management and staff are building the plane and trying to fly it at the same time. There are no organizational norms to follow and very little support infrastructure. In fact, that may be one of your jobs, build the support infrastructure, but who has the time? The enterprise is having great success and scaling rapidly, and that means 70, 80, and even 90-hour work weeks because the job is never done. It's exhilarating, challenging, and ultimately exhausting. Being a leader or early team member in a small business or high-growth startup is not for the faint of heart, nor does it make for short work days. If this is the path you are on, try to think of your day-to-day work as a marathon, not a sprint. What that really means is you need to implement a particular version of storytelling, good enough for now, story, through a reframe and possibly some negotiated compromises with key people close to you or sell them in this situation alone. What really sustains this solution, for now, is the new narrative, which illustrates the power of the storytelling mindset. Perhaps the best way to explain all this is with a story. Once upon a time, Dave asked Bill if he wanted to collaborate on an idea Dave had about teaching college students how to figure out what to do with their lives using design thinking. That conversation turned into one of the most popular electives at Stanford University, Designing Your Life. Once that course got going, it really got going. In fact, it just about exploded, and that put Dave into the condition of hyper-overwhelm. You see, the Life Design Lab really is a startup, and in the early days, like most startups, it was just the founders doing the best they could, working lots of long hours. And then when it started to work, there was no one to delegate to. It was all work all the time, and it all came together one late night in Palo Alto. Dave was walking out to the parking lot at Stanford, looked at his watch, and saw that it was 8 p.m. Shoot, said Dave. Actually, he strung quite a few words together and said something stronger than, shoot. He got into the car and called his wife. Hi, honey. Well, hello, dear, she said. I'm so sorry, said Dave. I did it again. I clearly missed our 7:30 dinner date. You see, Wednesday was dinner date night at Dave's house and he was supposed to be home, an hour's commute away. So by 8 p.m., it was clear that Dave's wife, Claudia, had figured out that he would not be home half an hour ago. This was not the first time this had happened. Well, she asked. It just blew up on me again. A whole bunch of students showed up for office hours that weren't scheduled, and then I got a message that the vice provost of undergraduate education wanted me to swing by the office and talk about where things could go in the future, and that's a meeting I really couldn't avoid. So when you put it all together with those extra student conversations, the time just disappeared again. I'm so sorry, honey. I blew it. I'll be there as soon as I can. Though, said Claudia, you must be so happy. This wasn't the response Dave had been expecting. Maybe he had misheard her. Tell me what, he stammered. Well, you must be so happy, because this is exactly what you want. I mean, everything you've told me says, this is perfect. More students are coming to office hours, and talking to students is your favorite thing. And then you're hearing from the provost office, which means you're now starting to have an impact at the institutional level. What you and Bill are doing is starting to make a difference. That's exactly what you hoped for. So it's really working. You must be so happy. Dave thought about it for a minute. Well, yes, that's right. I am so happy. I just called to let you know how wonderful things are, and how the wonderful things have inadvertently caused me to miss dinner again. Thank you, darling. Why, you're welcome. I'll see you when you get home. Now, the first and most important moral of the story is this: very well. The smartest thing Dave ever did was to design his life to be happy by marrying well to a brilliant and fabulous partner. That being said, there are other things to learn from this story. You see, what's going on in a hyper-overwhelmed situation is that lots of good things are happening, but there are way too many of them. And you're not in a situation like a happy overwhelm, where you can